Hello, I'm Dr. David Berv, and we're here with Diane at the Float Zone. Diane is participating in a case study on traumatic brain injury and flotation. And so in our first video, we talked a little bit about Diane's first 30 days of floating and the impacts on her during that time. And now we're going to talk about the second phase of her study, where we changed the frequency from daily to 3 times a week for a month.
Right.
And then we went to, it ended up being about once to twice a week for another month. And so tell us, how did your floats change? How did your perceptions change as you moved from the daily floats to the 3 times a week and then to the once to twice a week for the following month?
So there was sort of I would describe it as almost a 3-tiered phase during those first 30 days. The first section of that being a kind of getting acclimated and comfortable to the environment. I would describe it as there were moments where I almost didn't feel my body at all. I was so relaxed in my muscular system and all of that. And once I got to that place, it was the second phase, which was really working through and working on my mental state and my emotional state. So processing through a lot of the stuff that I was experiencing at the time, the emotional struggles, the normal stuff of life that occupies our brain and our mentality. And then I was able to really process and heal a lot of the things that were bothering me, and got to what I would call a third phase, where that mental stuff wasn't occupying me as much, and so it allowed me to dive deeper into a state of true body awareness, where I was noticing physical sensations within my body and able to direct the sense of energy that I had. I remember one time in particular, I was intentionally trying to notice the energy of my toe, and then made a point to put the energy into the heel of the other foot. And I was able to control it and direct it. And so it was really this time and sense of exploration and discovery about myself.
And according to the data, you made a lot of gains in a lot of different areas over that first 30 days. Do you feel that you were able to sustain the levels that you were at during the reduced frequency of the second month and third month?
Right. So I was journaling the entire time too. So looking back at the journaling and looking at the data, it shows that I sort of stayed in that space of deeper awareness, discovery, and exploration, kind of through maybe the 40th float, which is about halfway through January. And then it got to a place where I felt like I wasn't gaining any more necessarily like personal insight into my own condition, and the floats started to feel like it was more of a maintenance of clarity and a maintenance of energy and rejuvenation.
How did the floating help your sense of thinking and mental reasoning and what you term as, I guess, slowness? How did the floating help with that?
Well, so I had mentioned in the previous video that part of my search for some sort of treatment or whatever therapy was this sense of brain fog and slowness and just sort of a lack of control around my thoughts and thinking, which includes lessened ability to focus, clarity, the speed that I was processing thoughts at. Memory is something that I've struggled with kind of over the course of the past 10 years since the injury. And so during that second phase of the first 30 days, where I was really processing through mental stuff and emotional stuff and gaining this sensitive awareness of it, and then through that last period, I have personal notations where I identified my actual cognitive state and the different types of thoughts that I have, how they're generated, where they come from, how to work with them. In particular, my experience with memory and how to better, just be better at it. One of the things that I landed on in particular is that it's easier for me to recall information if I'm able to focus on the sensation, like the actual body sensation of the thought versus the details of the thought itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, in regards to that answer, I would say just this hyper level of awareness around my personal internal experience and how my brain processes thought.
Sure. One other thing that was remarkable to me was how your energy levels changed throughout. And so from the first 30 days, it seemed like you were able to maintain those energy levels. How did floating help to improve your energy levels, and then how did you use floating to manage your energy levels?
Yeah. I mean, that was almost like something that I didn't notice necessarily. I'm a very mental, analytical person. And so because I was having all of this awareness around my thoughts and myself and all these revelations, that really captured a lot of my attention. But what's interesting about the data that we were collecting is that it really shows a marked increase in energy. And I can say from a subjective sense, particularly now looking back, that prior to floating, I had this sort of general lethargy and kind of slumpiness about myself, which was certainly related to, emotional struggles and kind of, an experience of depression to a degree. I know that's a part of depression. But that was notable. It was a notable part of my experience. And so I think that the floating, it was in part because of this exciting revelation I was getting, but also I can't deny the rejuvenating quality of floating, but there was a marked increase in my general daily energy level.
That's excellent. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other experiences that Diane has had inside the tank in her second and third months. So stay tuned for our next segment. And Diane, thank